Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live. We talk all things automotive here, and we bring on the experts that share with us what they do and their passion for this business. And today we have a special treat. We have Brian Kramer with Germain Auto Group. And Brian gave a talk recently about the disruptors, that other C word. And, it's funny, he and I had been commenting on a lot of the same threads online, and our views are very much in alignment. So I figured, you know what? This is a good guy to bring on, and let's talk about it, because right now is when we're in the heart of what's going on with the disruptors. And I firmly believe that it is us in the car business that invited all of these disruptors in. Had we given the consumers everything they asked for, there would be no disruptors, none whatsoever. So Brian, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me on. So Paul and I were talking about, obviously, Carvana. We were talking about the digital dealer presentation that happened back in April, and that I'm going to give a modified version of at the upcoming Vegas digital dealer. I hope everybody that's watching in and observing this is going to be attending that. So I figured we just go through a few slides. I'm going to go through it like rapid fire, and then we'll come back into the Q&A.
Awesome. All right, let me bring it up now.
So what we did is we talked about Carvana beating them at their own game. They're the ultimate disruptor, and as Paul said, we allowed them to get into the space, and by our lack of disrupting ourselves, we opened this up. And Paul and I were just talking offline. I initially correlated what I'm about to talk about. I've got my 94-year-old grandmother grew up in London and Great Britain, and she was there during the Blitz, World War II. And she and I were talking recently, on her birthday, and she was talking about different things that she had gone through. And I was asking her what it was like, because she's one of the few that was there and experienced it. And she had the back of her house blown out when she was just a little girl, and she walked upstairs and there was no back to the back of her house. And she was talking about overcoming adversity. She said she still went to school that day. She walked over the rubble that used to be a grocery store, and ended up sleeping in the school for a few days and found a place to live. But I said, so what was, how did it come to be? Did you guys think it was going to, this disruption was going to happen like that with Germany and Great Britain? It seemed like from all the movies that it lasted a long time. She said, no, they had a false sense of security. The Eastern Front had the Maginot Line. And if you can go to the next slide, Paul. Oh,
you can click it right on your
again? Okay.
Yeah.
So she's talking about the Maginot Line, and she said that I don't know if I can. Let me see here real quick. The Maginot Line was on the Eastern Front of France, right there on the border of Belgium. And as a result, can everybody see this? Am I good?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so that's Winston Churchill in the right-hand corner. Neville Chamberlain on the left, Neville Chamberlain on the bottom, shaking Adolf Hitler's hand. So if you take a look at up there by Luxembourg and Belgium, Brussels, that's where the Maginot Line had a little gap. It was the Ardennes Forest. And she goes, France had a false sense of security. They never thought that anybody would be able to penetrate the Maginot Line. They had won World War I as a result of that, and they let their guard down. And since, Germany hadn't signed, they signed the whatever it was, Treaty of Versailles. They said they can't declare war on us because those aren't the rules. But kind of like with Shift Digital and the rules that we have with our websites, with the OEMs, with how we're doing business, well, Carvana, Vroom, CarMax, all these other retailers, they don't play by those set of rules. They don't have rules, right?
Right.
So they don't have to worry about compliance and map pricing and all these other things. So the timeline on World War II was like this. The locust years were wastefully spent. 34, 35, Winston Churchill saying, we should do something about this. We need to build up an infrastructure because this is going to be a threat down the road. But instead, France, England, the whole United Kingdom they just dismissed it. And they said, whatever, we've been doing it like this forever. It's not a big deal.
Sound familiar, guys? Sound familiar?
Right. And it's, as she's describing this to me, I mean, it's like the exact same thing, right? Then, to avoid war, Chamberlain proposes giving back British colonies to Hitler to avoid war. Hey, let's just, if they take a couple trades, it's not that big of a deal because, we're still making plenty of money right now. Our profitability is fantastic. What's the big deal? Germany invades and occupies Austria, which is very similar to how many of us, because I talk to a lot of my peers and they say, well, that's not my market. That might happen down in Florida, but it's not happening in XYZ city. They're not affecting me yet. They're not penetrating this market. We haven't seen the registration data, which I would argue that because I've got data to prove otherwise, because now from Seattle to Miami to Maine to San Diego, they're everywhere. And not just Carvana, but CarMax has been handing us our lunch for what, 20 years now?
Yeah.
Chamberlain assures Great Britain. So Chamberlain goes and he says he checks it out, but all he's doing is he's getting a confirmation bias. He's trying to prove why it's okay not to change, and why, he went down and he said, hey, Hitler, you're not going to attack us, are you? Absolutely not. Now, that's the same as many of us looking at Carvana's model and saying, you know what, they're putting stupid money in cars. We're not going to be playing in that space. I don't want to figure out how they're doing it. I don't need to figure out how they're doing it. That's their deal. I'm going to worry about us. So Chamberlain meets with Hitler, comes back to Great Britain. You get the people of Britain have nothing to worry about. Sleep well tonight. As Germany's invading and occupying Luxembourg, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Belgium, they're still celebrating World War I and all the wins, just like we are right now with this great year that we're having, and the great year last year profitability wise. So we're not in a place where we have to change. As Germany patiently assembled a 250-kilometer military traffic jam at the Belgian border, they're warning, which, I'm not trying to be like Paul Revere, but I'm telling you that the online retailers are coming. Germany invades and occupies France. So that's the traffic jam. They came and told everybody. Charles de Gaulle said, don't you think this is something that's important? But nobody reacted, right? And then here's the end of that story.
He did not set foot on the actual tower and was apparently annoyed that the lifts had been immobilized.
So that's the end of that story. And they, in 6 weeks, they rolled France, which at that time was a world global superpower. So the Blitzkrieg attack that's happening today is coming from Vroom. It's coming from Carvana. It's coming from all these online retailers.
You're going to buy the car? Please, if I could just go home and discuss things with my wife. I've been here all weekend.
You can leave anytime you want.
So we did all these things, right? So I'm combating what they're doing right back at them. But I'm just one location. And, we've got spots where they're pounding on a vending machine and saying, I just want to talk to somebody, because that's their Achilles heel, but they'll figure that out, and they evolve, and they evolve faster than we're evolving as an industry. So my point is they're selling 90, this is not counting Q2, which was up even more, but 92,500 cars. It's up to, I think, 118,000 now. Now, where are they getting all these cars? They're getting them for our customers. It's up 110% year-over-year growth, 72,000. They're sourcing 65, which is now up to 73% sourced from customers. Now, mind you, 43% of them, they wholesale back to us.
Right.
So, and we're buying them at the auction, and we're paying them, like you said, Paul, $1,200 a copy. This $36.56, that was in Q1. And Q2, they averaged $5,100 a copy. $5,100 a copy. Now, everybody's going to say, well, what's the recon? What's this? The recon, just so you know, is 1031. And I can go into all the different pontification, but everybody needs to just get over that. And you need to get past what all the confirmation biases there are to justify why we can't do this.
Right.
And then once you set that aside, then you can start, when you have the acceptance piece, then you can start getting better. And you start realizing that there's a market for a Hyundai Palisade that's a year old that's selling, for $3,000 over MSRP, and then they retail them for $3,000 over that or $5,000 over that. They don't also play in the subprime business. They don't go 620 and below. That's a whole different conversation. They don't currently accept deals with cosigners. Why? Because the tag and title is just too complex for what their business model is currently. I'm sure they'll figure that out. But like you and I were talking about before this presentation, Paul, what we don't commit to doing is more important than what we do commit to doing. So,
Right.
so that's instead of going through the whole rest of that deal, I will say this. I do have one last thing to show. They win trades, and whoever wins the most trades wins. And you don't see the Carvanas, the CarMaxes, the Vrooms, and everybody in the world. You don't, this is our, if everybody can see this is our trade row right after digital dealer, but it's like that whenever we have new car inventory. And there's a limitless supply of new car inventory. If we just go out there and grab it, and we take this approach the same way that these online retailers do, but we've got to stop vilifying them and start learning from them and doing it better than them. And car dealers are the most resilient business people in the world. We'll figure it out. We just have to take what they're doing and get past that mental roadblock in our mind. And we don't need a downturn or something like that to prove it. We just need to just step up and figure it out and then out execute them. We've got the facilities. We've got local community presence. We've got better people. We have
the relationships. I mean,
right.
We sold these people the cars. So who better than us to foster that relationship? Let me get to a couple of comments here. My buddy Paul Machine says, "Hola, brothers, a disruptor's disruptor." He says, "My grandfather called it the imagination line," when you had the slide up before.
He knows used cars. Paul Machine knows used cars as well as anybody in the country.
Oh, yeah. Carmine Cristinos is great content. Paul Machine says, "The data proves that dealers' biases is the reason they are thought for not doing what CarMax and Carvana and other retailers do." You know what? Here's the thing that kills me, right? So we have the established relationship with the customer. I've been in this business 41 plus years. Okay, so I've walked into a lot of stores. When you and I had a conversation not all that long ago, you said to me, "It's like you were in my store."
Right.
Right.
Yes, it's like you're in my morning meeting.
Yeah, I was in your store, and probably a few $100 just like it. And we may dress differently in different parts of the country and different regions, but guess what? The scenarios and the situations are the same. What I see happening is people, we're in sales, right? Everybody's in sales. I don't care what you do, you're in sales. You're trying to sell somebody in your product. But when I walk into the store, this is not what I see. "Hi, Mrs. Jones, it's Paul from XYZ Motors. How you doing today?" "Oh, great. Listen, I don't see any of that going on. I don't care how many stores I walk into. And this is BC, before COVID. For years, I don't see people pounding the phones, developing those relationships."
Well, I think that a big part of that is that we don't take the time to sit with our sales staff. I mean, we've relied on BDCs for so long that our salespeople's phone call muscles have atrophied, and it's not just the salespeople's fault or the BDC's fault. I mean, it's the manager's fault. It's the GM's fault. I mean, we've got to roll our sleeves up and we've got to dig in. I mean, the business is not walking in the door anymore, and we need to take responsibility for that. And we need to be able to, and the customers that are on the phone are the lowest funnel customers. And if they're calling us, there's no phone number for Amazon or Google or any of these other retailers. If they call you, there's a fail on your online presence, and there's something that they weren't able to resolve themselves. It's service, software as a service.
Right.
And that's a whole nother conversation on building an FAQ page, which they do very well. But really, it needs to be, to your point, that's where we take over. That's where dealers thrive, is we answer the phones and we can resolve that for the customer, or we can do the opposite, and we can hurt the relationship if we don't handle it correctly.
Well, here's the thing. The phone, the data will show that we collectively as a group don't do a very good job on the phone. That's just a reality. there's a percentage of business lost, a large percentage, based on what you and I aren't doing on the phone. That's just a fact. So when we get that opportunity and the phone does ring, I mean, like to your point, it's the lowest hanging fruit. And yes, we've missed something in our online process, but now we have the ultimate opportunity. How hard is it to get a customer on the phone sometimes, right?
And then when they call and they get at the end of their rope and they couldn't get the information themselves off our website because their websites are insufficient. And then our DR tool didn't mirror what the website said. And all the other things didn't mesh together. And all of our messaging and our branding and our advertising that says these big discounts, but then we don't, we tell them we're going to buy their car and give them a number online, even if they don't buy one from ours. And then they get on our website and then they can't get the number correctly, so they call, and then we say, it'd be a lot easier if you just came in instead of just giving them the information. And that's
when you come in,
right. And that's the hook of Carvana is you don't see them on. I'm not going to name all the third-party websites, but you know which ones I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And they don't have to advertise on there. And if you take a look, they used to, Carvana used to spend 13% of their gross on marketing, and then right now it's 3%. Next year it's going to be 1.5% because they built a brand, and that's what we have to do as dealers. And I didn't realize this until a few years ago, but it's the, it's the secret sauce. We all need to figure it out, and then we need to also deliver on our brand promises and do what we say we're going to do, which we don't always do as an industry. And Carvana does, and the aggregate of them doing it on a large scale. Obviously you can take a look at their all their Wall Street, earnings reports, and you can see what it is that's doing. And they look at it as a total aggregate. We can sit there and point out, oh, this one car they lost money on, or, we can point out the same thing for us, one car that we lost money on, but they look at a 6 to 8 to 10%, loss ratio, which is how most businesses look at it. But we look at it as one light item. No, you remember that one Cadillac that we lost money on, and it was green, it was this, and we burn it in our mind, and then we won't take that car in on trade anymore. We have this confirmation bias where when we see a green Cadillac again, it's the kiss of death. Right, exactly. And maybe we should, but we don't. But we got to have the data to support it.
All right, let me go to a couple of comments here. Paul Machine says the data proves that dealers' biases is the reason that they. Oh, I read that one already. Sorry. Mark Williamson, Carvana could do the modern day Titanic should the used car market correct itself quickly.
So I agree, and I disagree with Mark Williamson on that. So I agree that it could be the modern day Titanic, but I think that it's not because of the used car business. It's only if we get our our stuff together and we come together as an industry, because we're letting them. You said it on a LinkedIn post once, Paul. You said we're just handing them our lunch money as they come into the cafeteria. And we just have to stop letting them do it. We just have to get our own trades. We put the right money in the trades, and you can literally choke them out by, just by winning all the trades. You cut off their food supply, and that's how that's the iceberg that needs to hit that cruise liner.
Now here's the ironic thing, right? So the customer today, we live in micro moments. Everything has to happen quickly. If it doesn't happen quickly, it's not going to happen. Okay. Now, I've seen for years, we've had tooling, we've had the technology to be able to outfox them at every turn. We've had it. Okay. We've been for years in this. Let's see if I can steal the trade. It's the beginning of the month. You know what? I don't care about that deal. Let them go buy it someplace else. And then guess what? 2 weeks later, hey, Bob, get Mrs. Jones on the phone. Tell her we just found $500 for her trade, right? Because now we want the deal again. Because that month-end cycle it repeats itself. But guess what? When you told Mrs. Jones to go pound sand because we weren't giving her X amount for her car,
you lost her trust.
Else. And they bought her car, and she bought their car. But here's the point that I want to make. The technology, to get technology in front of a lot of stores today is a very, very difficult thing to do. because unless you have some kind of hook, people are reluctant to try this technology. I remember years ago in stores, we spent stupid money on stuff that nobody ever heard of. Nobody. Only to come out of the foxhole blazing, and we crushed it. Today, fast forward 30 years later, today, I don't think we have the same mentality that we had then, because now it's more of a, $900 a month. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? No. Well, who else is using this? So unless you can prove that all of your customers were taken by a particular tool that somebody else uses that you haven't even yet committed to even looking at, unless they can prove to you that it works because they took all your customers, and then you look at it one step further. Well, okay, so you took all my customers, so I think it kind of works, but now, I want a 60-day trial. Let me think about whether or not it works. But the time that the internet, it moves 24/7, it never stops. So the time we sit back not utilizing the tool is the time that they're taking our customer. So for instance, when I'm looking at a car, it may have, there are different variations of the car. Now, a car with XYZ package is worth this much money. A car with base package is worth this much money. But we don't always know that information until we go back and forth with the customer. Yet there's technology out there today that, based on the VIN, can tell us exactly what the true value of that car is if we invest the money in that tool.
And if we invest the time to put the correct all 17 digits of the VIN.
Yes.
So what happens, and I've seen it happen, and it's happened in our store up until here, a few years ago, that everybody says, let's just see if we're close. And the biggest misconception that I've seen, and I've been in the business 26 years, and I started off driving my appraisals over to Denny's, where my used car manager was drinking in the evenings, and he was sitting with 3 wholesalers, and that's how I learned to appraise cars, because the wholesalers trained me. So, and then there's envelopes exchanging hands and all that, all that craziness. But we've come a long way since then, and we've got the data that we didn't have back then, but we just, for some reason, as an industry, don't choose to use it. Yes. And it's right at our fingertips. Now, when we go to a grocery store, go to Target or whatever, if somebody wants to go faster, they can self-checkout. If you want to go to a doctor's office, you can fill out your information ahead of time, so you don't have to wait. And I've made that mistake, right? So what I find, and our team finds, is that when we send a sight unseen appraisal to a customer, the customer is more accurate than we are. And it says in the email that we send out, or the text message or whatever, make sure you're as accurate as possible. The more accurate you are, the better the trade value, which is true, because the algorithm obviously reflects if somebody's going to be more detailed, that person takes better care of their car, and so on and so forth. Yeah. But what they will put in the options that we typically don't want to put in. We want to find out, kind of like it was in the old days, hey, if terms and conditions are agreeable, would you do business today? And then once we get that answer, right, and then once we get that answer, then we decide whether or not we're going to do paperwork. And when in actuality, you want to digitally retail, you want to do sight unseen appraisals, you want to do all these things. It's a layering effect, right? So
you're getting the commitment in pieces.
Right, and that hasn't changed. That's no different than Joe Verdi was talking about back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And how do you want to title the vehicle? In one name or two names? Is it a company name? But making sure of that, because that's critically important these days. Once it gets to the digital retail part, the selection, the accurate miles on the vehicle being selected, and then the appraisal, and making sure that the appraisal is accurate, making sure that we empower our salespeople to go through Route 1 or Dealer Track and be able to pull a payoff, so that everything's happening, because we're going to have to do it anyway. If we're assuming the closing ratio is so high right now, why would we not do all that stuff? But I see so many dealers that wait until the last minute. Oh, holy shit. They said they're going to buy the car. Let's go into delivery mode. Hold on a second. Let me get your driver's license. Let me get your insurance card that I didn't get before the test drive. Let me find out how you're going to title the vehicle. Oh, that's not actually the car you want to take. You wanted to see if you get it in this color. Well, right now with these conditions, it's going to be a lot tougher. And then all of a sudden you're back on the Ferris wheel. And then the customer said, I thought the TV commercial said I could buy in an hour or less. And then we make excuses as to why they can't, when in actuality it's because we didn't treat the buyer like a buyer at the end of the day. And that's the misconception of digital retail.
I walked into a store before COVID, and there was a big sign on the showroom floor, ask us about our express 2-hour delivery.
And what do they, and you asked them, and what do they say? I
didn't even ask them. When I saw that, I just shook my head in disbelief. That's a lifetime.
And here's the thing: if you want to, and Sean mentioned, and Paul Machine are talking about it right now in these comments. If you want to know what somebody's digital, their express purchase process is, you ask them what their sight unseen appraisal process is, and it's a tough thing to get everybody on board with that. That we're going to trust a number, no matter what. So to answer Sean's question, here's how it works in our store. And I'm not saying this is the way. I'm just saying it's a way. We want to win every single trade. We want to win every single trade that's here, that's not here. I look at, CarMax had to start doing it virtually. They wanted everybody to come into the dealership up until a few months ago. And they realized that Carvana and Vroom were getting too much business from them. And think about what they've done. And I mean, Carvana has only been around since 2014, but it really didn't come on until 2018. Right. And in that amount of time, 3 years or whatever, they are now the subject. They're the subject, the most trusted resource. I was talking to a service advisor of mine, and I was talking about TrueCar, and he said, TrueCar. Well, who would, old people look at TrueCar, and it blew my mind.
That's so 2019, Brian.
Right. And it just, to your point, it's happened that quick. And I'm like, wow, okay. Well, then it's time to white label our own brand, because if Carvana can do it in 3 years, we can do it in 2. And that's the way that I look at it. But the biggest problem is Carvana actually does what they say they're going to do when they pick it up, right? And for a long time, managers that I've worked with in multiple dealerships and multiple dealer groups have said, I don't care what that tool says, that thing's not worth that. Or these tires are mismatched. Or, well, that would be great if it wasn't for this, or if it wasn't for that. Now we're at the point where we're taking an OBD2 scanner when they come in, when they physically come in. But to answer Sean's question, and really the unicorn that everybody's looking for, is that you're not gonna win on all of the appraisals. You're gonna have to think like Carvana does, is that 6 to 10% of them you're gonna lose money on, and you got to be okay with that. And that's the hardest part.
Because that's part of the strategy. Let me get to a couple of comments here. Paul Machine says, you are a spring chicken, Paulie. I don't think so, man. I just celebrated the big 6-0. That's old AF. Okay, I'm sorry. There's no spring chicken here. Paul Machine says, if you have kids as a parent, you are GM getting sold all day, every day. Joe Perez, wow, this thing just flew by. Sometimes you click on the comments and it just flies. Paul Machine says, truly humbled by your praise, Brian. Well, it's true. Paul, you live in data every day. It's what you do, Ron Usher says, hey guys, sorry running late today. There's no early, late. It's you get here when you can, and those that miss it, see it on the replay. I always appreciate your support, Ron. You're always on the show. Paul said, I have a buddy who 2 weeks ago put a huge billboard on the front of his lot reading, we want to buy your car. He asked if he was too late. I said, yes, because it takes months to build your local brand as a buyer. And you read Sean's comment before? Yes?
Yep.
All right. Paul Machine says, number one comment I get from my partners, I'm paying less for vehicles sight unseen compared to if I see the vehicle on my lot or in the lane. Customers are more critical about the condition because they want complete transparency and trust. Every partner should share that with me.
So I agree with that. And when he says that, it's because there's so many people that are so standoffish, and I can't tell you how many customers come in. And a lot of these things I'm learning as we go, but I'm trying to ask a lot more questions than my staff would really like to answer as I keep on trying to dig deep because they're trying to sell cars. I'm like, oh my God, Kramer, will you please? And but what Paul's saying is absolutely true. As I dig into all these situations, the customers have the expectations that are so low. They expect us to suck. So if we don't suck, you exceed their expectations. And they don't want, it's not even like they want the moon for their cars. They just want to not be jacked around when they come in, and they just want you to do what you said you were going to do, which is a very difficult thing to consistently do because we, as an industry, are sloppy when it comes to the appraisal. And as we look through it, we'll, look for this, we missed this, and we didn't, put two and two together. But you really need a third party, a KBB ICO, an AccuTrade. That's who we use. Yeah. To be the referee of the deal, to say this is what the number is, and it's a quick number. So you just remove that doubt from the managers, the salespeople, and then everybody can just do what they do best, which is delight the customer. And
what's interesting is that you're saying we're sloppy, and we are, and we lack process. We start things and we tend to let them go and not finish them, and then somebody else comes in. We start new things that last for a little while. After a while, people start rolling their eyes. Oh, another new guy coming in to set the world on fire, right? The next 90-day wonder comes in. But if we just stick with the plan, it's really easy. The customers don't want to deal with that, which is why these guys are doing as well as they are. But if we gave them what we wanted out of the gate, car who?
Right. No, they would have some. Then it would be the Titanic hitting an iceberg.
Yeah. Mark Williamson says, in today's market, dealers are competing on trades, but not Carvana and CarMax are not diversified enough. No service, parts, or new car revenue to balance out their business. It's like investing all your money in one stock and hoping that it rings the bell. Yeah, but see, if we look at it that way,
he's right in a way, but what you don't see is the Trojan horse that they're building with their now they got 12 IRCs, their internal reconditioning centers. Yeah. And what you're going to see is it's very much like in Star Wars, as they're building all these battle stations all over the galaxy or whatever. They've got 12 of these things. They know exactly how much money they generate, what's the net profit of each one. They're working out, just so everybody knows, this is a dry run. They're working out their internal reconditioning processes so they can open these things up to the public. And if their long-term strategies are buried within their shareholder reports and their shareholder calls, but their long-term play is to then flip that over to a Pet Boys AutoZone type scenario. And then when they master, which they will, they master their internal reconditioning speed to market process, and they get better every single day, more efficient, then, because they study Six Sigma. Once they're done with that, then they're going to flip it over to the customer facing CP side. And then there's going to be a problem. And that's what we should all be terrified of. Yeah. That's the more scary thing than what they're doing with sales.
Huge, because let's face it, we capture as a dealer body across the board, 3 out of 10 customers on service. And that includes many of them that have it included at no charge. Think about that for a second. Somebody would rather come to you and pay money than go back to where they came from, where they could get it from free, because maybe they don't trust the situation, whatever the reason.
Or it's time.
I have a video on YouTube. I was, I'm kind of into food. That's not a secret to anybody that knows me for more than an hour or two. I eat out a lot. And we were having a conversation with our server. And I was saying to her, I said, everything takes forever when you're getting your car fixed. I made that comment to her. And she says, that's not true. I said, really? What do you mean? She says, I went to one of these express oil places. She says, I sat in my car. I was in and out in no time. She says, I realized I paid more money than I would have had I gone someplace else. But for me, she says, I'm busy. I don't have time. I'll do that all day long, every day. I'm happy to do it. So there's a price. We look at things as, everybody's always looking for the cheapest price, but that's not the case. We just need to be in the ballpark.
What about Instacart? I just ordered groceries tonight. I ordered Uber Eats tonight, and all of that, and it's definitely not the cheapest. I could have saved a lot more money if I would have gone to the grocery store.
You're buying a $4 burger and you're paying $4 delivery.
Right.
How long is that going to last?
Probably a long time, because if I sit there and I calculate my time and getting in my car and doing this versus what I could be doing, the majority of the people are now starting to figure out what their time's worth. I was reading that study, The Messy Middle by Google, and it was talking about since 1990 the search terms, right? So the best price is going like this, and the best value and best use of time is going like that. And it's a fascinating thing. If anybody hasn't read it, you talk about the 0 moment of truth. That's the next evolution of that. And it's happened so gradually that none of us have noticed. I didn't notice it until I looked at it. But what are people looking for? And that's what they're looking for.
You know what? And I find it interesting that, Mark is a well-respected guy. I have a lot of respect for Mark. He does a great job with what he's doing. But a lot of people have the perception that because they don't have service, right? But to your point, and I was going to say, not yet. Not yet, because let's face it, there's a lot of money to be made in service, a ton of money.
And to his point, their biggest play is the fintech play. And that's and everybody can come back to me 3 years from now, because this is the most disruptive things are not what we're looking at today. The fintech play is where all of these Trojan horses are going to disrupt everything. They're going to disrupt lending, every digital retail tool, every online, Carvana is looking at their biggest source of revenue is their banking business. And when they have a customer profile, and everybody that I'm sure there's nobody on this call that's selling their inventory to Carvana, their aged inventory. But if anybody is, just remember what Toys R Us did when they made that deal with the devil with Amazon. And Amazon built a buyer profile through Kenshu and Kantar of all of their customers. And then once they sold X amount of people through Amazon, now they know what those buyers look like. They can retarget them through Oracle and Facebook, custom audiences. And then they know what that looks like. They can target your customers, and they will bury you. So that's the end game for anybody who's pushing their stuff to Carvana. They're brilliant. They're better marketers than any of us. They've got the smartest, the Wayfair people and all these other people on their board. So just keep your guard up if that's the game that you're playing.
And the ironic thing is, we have the warning. We've had the warning. But rather than heed the warnings, we're very quick to point out here's a mistake that was made in this state and they got shut down from doing business until January of 2022. Is this the end? No, it's not the end. It's an episode. If we were to be, if we got caught with all of the stuff and the mistakes that we make on a regular basis, honest mistakes, for the most part, just honest, simple mistakes. We're human. We make mistakes. But if we got caught for all those things, and I firmly believe it's just a lack of enforcement officers out there, because you can walk into 100 stores, and what's your guess as to how much money in just safeguarding customer data violations we would rack up in a store? If
80, 100 grand.
Per store,
80 to
right?
100. Yeah.
Per store. But there isn't the team of agents to go out there and do this. But yet when we see, this happened at a Carvana site, and you don't think the other surrounding stores are delivering cars?
No, everybody is. And not everybody, I could talk about that for hours in terms of digitizing the process to protect ourselves from that. But you're right. The pain is not great enough to justify the change as of yet, but it will be.
But the problem is when it hits, we're going to get caught with our pants down because they're building this juggernaut of service that's huge. I mean, right now, you go into any store, I don't care where you go, and you do a few simple searches. I think we engaged in this particular post. Do a search for oil change near me, brake service near me, battery service near me, from the dealer's parking lot, and tell me where it takes you. 9 out of 10 times, 9.5 out of 10 times.
Valvoline, Jiffy Lube, Pennzoil, every time.
Yeah. So what happens when these guys launch their service centers?
And those are the most expensive search terms. Those are like about $4.50 a word, and they're probably more where you're from. That's how much they are down here. But that is that and tires. Those are the two most, competitive spaces in terms of Google SEM. I mean, it's absolutely brutal. You're right. And I hope that everybody takes this to heart because I'm learning a lot as we go through this. What they do is they don't even do that. They don't even get in that SEM pay-per-click game. They do branding. So their organic search pushes their cost per click down. It pushes so they can buy these words cheaper than we can because of what they do and because they have a brand. And if we're sitting there going on these 30-day sprints as to best price, best selection, biggest volume, biggest discount, all these other things, and then we start over again, instead of sticking with a consistent branding message like they have with We'll Buy Your Car, their terms become so much more relevant. They become more sticky. And then their ability to buy these Google terms is so much less than from us. It's very scary.
And the person that takes the wheel off gets the brake work. And
everything else that goes with it.
They're sharp, okay? They get the suspension work. They get the shock work. They get the service work. Because guess what? I ran Midas stores for 11 years, okay? And I believe in my heart that the people develop relationships in the aftermarket in ways that they don't necessarily develop them with the service personnel at a dealership just by virtue of the layering that you have between the customer and the ultimate person that works on their car.
And the convenience of it, as well as anybody, if you've got the wheels off and all of a sudden, hey, by the way, while I'm in there, the CV boot is ripped.
Yeah.
I've already got this off. It's going to be 3 hours less because I've already got it torn down. And by the way, your upper control arm or whatever it is that's bent, or your rack and pinion's going to be going out at some point. The spindles and
Here,
I can do it.
Let me show you.
Right.
They're there. They're in the shop. They're under the car because I've been there. I've taken a customer's finger and put them on an oil leak under the lift. I've done that. And as far as the maintenance, hey, I noticed the sticker on your windshield. You're going to be due for a service soon. Did you want us to take care of that while you're here so you don't have to worry about it? Why would they come back?
There's no good reason. Because you're already there. The labor's already been done.
Yeah. There's no reason to come back. So, I really hope that everybody takes this stuff to heart. It's not the sky isn't falling, right? We're not Chicken Little saying the sky is falling. We're not. We're just saying realistically, based on the weather report, the fact that we see the clouds moving this way, and we can read the barometer, we know there's a storm coming. I'm just asking you to make sure you've got your umbrella ready.
Right. If there's a tsunami in the distance, get to higher ground. Don't sit there and sit on the beach, saying it's going to be fine. And it's because it's a huge opportunity. It's been wildly profitable for us taking these best practices and just, I guess, doing what we should have been doing the whole time.
If we commit to it and stick to it, we can beat them at their own game because we've already got the infrastructure. We've already got the state-of-the-art facilities. We've already got the people. I've run stores. Let me tell you, some of the crew that I've had some great guys, but I've also had some not so good guys. Okay, I remember actually more than once. One time I remember it was in the summertime, and 3 state police cars pulled up to the shop. from different angles. They got out, guns drawn, and they took one of my guys away. No joke. And there were bullets in his toolbox. Another time, another customer, not a customer, one of the other techs, this guy did 8 years for homicide. Had been out a number of years, seemed like a nice guy. He stole a customer's car, got it repainted at Mako, one of their ambassador paint jobs, and this schmuck had the audacity to come back to work with the customer's car in a different color. We don't have that at dealerships. We don't.
It's like Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah. We don't have that at dealerships. We have state-of-the-art facilities. We've got training. We've got places where
background checks
are happy to come and are proud to come if we just refocus the effort. Let me get to a couple of comments here. Sean, did you read this one? Are you appraising every single car that goes through the service lane?
Okay, so we didn't answer that. So that's a pretty good question. In a perfect world, I would love to say that we are, but we're not. You got rental cars, you got drop-offs, you got after hours drops. Now, I will say this: every single customer the night before, we're texting them a link to get a sight unseen appraisal.
Yeah.
Would you like to get an idea what your car is worth before you show up? We are probably greeting 30% of them. We're selling over 3% of our CP and our warranty ROs. Yeah. Another vehicle, which is the industry average, but I hear there's people that are doing 5 to 6%.
Yeah.
Where our equity team has an OBD2 scanning tool, so they're actually doing a diag test on every appraisal that goes, every repair order that comes through that they look at. They're also able with an iPad to be able to provide a value on the spot. I think that's critical because when the customer's involved and the customer sees what's going on, you're negotiating reconditioning instead of pontificating about what the value of the car is. And they rarely argue about the car. They do debate about the reconditioning. We set it at $75 an hour, but it gives you a real value depending on when you scan it. Yeah. If the cylinder number 2 is misfiring or whatever, it'll tell you exactly what that is. If it's a starter issue, like when I just, took my FJ Cruiser underwater last week off-roading, came back and it sucked all the sand and water into the starter. Yeah, it did that and cracked my radiator, but it knew everything that was going on, but it could tell me exactly what the parts and the labor were going to be based on Mitchell. And I think that that's a critical thing because we're not always as accurate as we should be on the service lane. So we start trying to be conservative. Well, I don't know, to check engine lights, let's just hit it at $2,000 when it might only be $300 or it might be $500 or it might be $3,000.
And we have the technology to be able to test that.
Right. We just need to slow down and empower our people.
Are we 100% on it? No, we're not. But to your point, we have to realize we're going to make some mistakes. And we have to factor that into our overall budget if we're going to win the game, because you have nothing until you've sold or bought that car.
And you don't have to spend as much on marketing if you empower your people to appraise that many more cars. But it's a tough thing to pencil out when you haven't been there before. But you should not be paying as much for advertising. Just like Carvana's throttling theirs back, we should be throttling ours back and being okay with a little bit more of a margin of error because we're going to win more trades.
Well, here's the thing, too. On average, I know this is how it's been. I don't know if anything's changed with COVID, but half the cars that come into our drive are cars we know, cars that we sold.
It's not higher.
So we know the service history. We know they had brakes done last year, 8,000 miles ago. So we know that's not an expense we're going to incur. We know they bought tires. It's not an expense we're going to incur.
And if you're scanning it, we find about 10 a week where people are clearing the codes at AutoZone, Pet Boys. It's mind-boggling to me because I wouldn't have thought it would be like that. But there's a lot of codes being cleared, or they're clearing them with their own scan tools. So if you're not accurately scanning with an OBD2 tool like a Vintel or something like that, if you're not doing that during that appraisal, you're either, opening yourself up to, and that's what people say, well, I had to wholesale the car because we missed this. There's no way we could have check that. It's not like we have a borescope or it's, some way to be able to know that that was happening on the inside, but you do. If you run a scan tool on every single appraisal, like an AccuTrade, it populates into the the actual appraisal and to where it freezes it like a Carfax, where you can't even manipulate that. So it's just hard coded in there. That's how you get actually more aggressive, because you're minimizing your risk of error.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about, well, what if this or what if that? It just is.
You open the door, you poke your head under there, you pop it in, or at worst case scenario, you pop off one little plastic cover.
Right, exactly.
But so it takes seconds to do, but it's the process, right? It's the process that we have to put in place and follow 100%. We've got to set it up in such a way that we can run a report, like an exception report in, let's say, CDK, right?
Yes.
If we know where we're missing, we can talk about how do we fix that. Maybe we need to make this adjustment here or that adjustment there. We can do that. And if we make that concerted effort, if everybody's bought in, if everybody knows what each other's value are to that department and what they bring to the table.
Instead of trying to sell cars for more and raising the retail prices, if you get more accurate with what you're talking about, Paul, Carvana says that's $650 a copy. So if you want to raise your PVR $650 a copy, don't pass that cost on of our inefficiencies to the customer.
Right.
Just get more efficient.
Yeah. It's not that hard. Kenneth Dunner says, tonight's conversation is so damn scrumptiously, deliciously, edibly tasty good. Savor the flavor of the awesomeness in you gents for sharing your delectable thoughts with us tonight.
I'm a big Willy Wonka fan, so I'm a fan of that comment.
The strawberries taste like strawberries. The schnozberries taste like schnozberries. That's one of my favorite all-time movies. Paul Machine says, without giving away secret sauces, Recon is the #1 ingredient in speed to retail ready. Here's my thoughts on Recon. And tell me if I'm way off base or not. I'm a big boy. I will admit if I'm wrong. If you were to walk into, you pick the number of stores, it doesn't really matter, it's an exercise. And you ask 10 people in that store, what is your time to market? How many different do you think you'll get?
As many people you talk to, it's going to be that many different answers.
How many of them are going to be accurate?
30% maybe?
Maybe. You're more of an optimist than I am. And here's the kicker. We have the technology to be able to look at what we're doing and objectively say, I know you think it's 4, but the data from when you bought the car, the clock's ticking. Tim Scodless puts it best. I don't know if you've heard this phrase from him or not. He says, your inventory is like a block of ice on hot asphalt. The minute you own it, it is melting, losing value, right?
That's a great analogy. I heard the fish market analogy. Dave Kaler, my mentor, said, it's like that. And after a few days, it starts the way that fish smell. That's what your inventory is like the longer you let it go through the recon process.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'd rather have somebody come in, plug some shit into my software and tell me, I know you think it's 4, but it's really 10. And this is what it's costing you per day to do that, multiplied times this many cars, times 26 days a month, times 12 months. This is your true cost. This is where we can save money. But a lot of people will say, I'm good. I got this covered. And they'll put their arm around your shoulder and they'll walk you to the door and they'll pat you on the back as they're giving you the gentle nudge out the door.
You know what? I had a fantasy football draft this morning, and I'm sitting there trying to game the draft, right? I've got a automated thing telling me what the best average draft position is. And at the end of the recap, it says, you took this person nine picks ahead of where they should have been picked. You took this person 8 head, but you also took this person way low. Hopefully that was a misclick. And it gave us like the recap, and it said, your overall draft rating is a C. And I'm like, a C? I thought those were amazing picks, right? With my intuition and my gut. But the data doesn't reflect that. And basically we all disrupted it because I got emotionally connected to Tampa Bay players and Chicago Bears players and this person that I like here, and Brady's going to do this. So I wanted to get some of his receivers, and I didn't draft the best end, the best player, just like we don't always select the best end user on an appraisal.
And the other thing too is maybe not so much of a problem now because we're in this artificial bubble of ours, but by not relying on the technology, oftentimes we rely upon our own history. Okay, we took this many of this model in trade. This is what we sold. We typically do good with these cars. And we're accurate with that number. Where we were not accurate is there are other cars that are hot in the market that we haven't seen before. Therefore, we don't have any history with it. And I'll give you a beautiful example. In our knitting business, my wife, we sold a lot of shawls. And my wife said, we don't sell a lot of sweaters. Okay. Well, how many sweaters do we have out there? Well, we don't really have any sweaters out there. Oh, well, why don't we start putting some sweaters out there? And just to see. Oh, my customers don't buy sweaters. No, I get that. But why don't we put a few sweaters out there and see? So guess what we sell a lot of right now?
Sweaters.
We never knew because we never put them out there. So how many times don't we buy something because we have no experience with it, yet we have availability to the software that tells us, hey, you might not be doing well with these particular models, but that guy over there, he sold 40 of them last month. And that lady over there, she sold 25 of them last month.
And if you don't know that as a dealer, like I can tell you in our store, Nissan non-Toyota, Nissan Rogues are number one, which I'm not a Rogue fan personally, but I am financially because it turns quick and it turns at a high clip. Number two is Jeep Wranglers and Jeep Gladiators. Why? I don't know, nor do I care. I just know that it is. So if somebody brings one of those in, and I know that if somebody is looking for a white, or if somebody on trade has a white limited platinum Highlander, 18, 19, or 20, we are the best end user in the country. And I know what we gross on the front. I know what we gross on the back. Maybe it doesn't happen on every single one of them, but they typically turn in 6 to 8 days.
You play the averages, right?
And I'm going to pay way over, and I'm going to sell them for 110, 115% of market because that's what we sell them for. So I'm going to pay a lot more than what the market says because I know what I'm going to make.
But you wouldn't know that just by gut. You know that by data. And I loved your comment the other day. On a post, you said, emotionally, yeah. But
right.
give me 10 Tacomas.
Yes.
Right. And
that's a result of learning it the hard way.
Yeah. But you learn from the data. Now, I hope I'm putting you on the spot, but I hope you're okay with going a little over because there's some comments. This is so good. And I suspected it was going to be good, but we got a bunch of comments that I might get caught up on. Paul Machine says, bring it to me, dealer, in bring it to me economy. If you're not giving permission to your customers to say, bite me. I love that. Bring it to me economy. Bite me. If you don't do it, somebody else will.
So by us putting all the money in the cars, we stopped under allowing and stopped over allowing, which was against everything in my DNA. And now we can say, because we had price match guarantees and it was all, hey, if you find a better price, we're going to do this and all this other stuff. And Carvana doesn't do that. And CarMax doesn't do it either. So we now put our best foot forward and we praise the car for what it's worth. And if they don't do it for that, we're okay with it. And what was happening is we would hit it a little bit low, we're under allowing, and then all of a sudden the customer says, well, this place said that they're going to give me this. Well, what if I did this? But now you're opened up Pandora's box, right?
You don't want to go down that road.
And that genie's out the bottle and you're not putting it back in.
No.
So now you got to sit there and, well, where do you want to be? Well, let me see if my manager can go do that. If I could do this, would you do that? Yeah. And now they're okay. Now I'm gonna put it to you, and I'm gonna make you pay for what you did.
And that exact scenario is what opened the box that for these guys to come in. People hated that. How much is that car?
Right.
I'm gonna pay. Have you heard that over the last 20 years?
Right, as they're snapping their Sansa belts, I got something for you.
You know, it's so funny. You and I, we live in different worlds, but
we've experienced the same thing.
Steve Apicella, this guy, I love Steve because Steve doesn't just make a comment. Steve puts a lot of thought behind what he puts out there. He says Amazon is not the cheapest, but they're getting the most online business. Experience is the secret sauce, but it's not exclusive to selling something digitally. Anyone can do that. Amazon is disruptive and ultra successful because they've solved the customer experience challenge before and after the sale. Their customers are loyal because it's simple to engage engage even beyond the sale. Digital retailing is not the end game. He is 100% right.
I couldn't agree with him more. And everybody focuses on digital retail, and digital retail is just the beginning. And it's not the end game. It just opens up a whole nother set of problems. And then you actually have to take care of the customer. And there's no vendor, there's no website provider, there's no widget that can fix that.
It's you.
Right.
Mr. Dealer, it's you.
And that's the hardest part.
Let's see. Greg Dudley, Costco, Sam's Club, Walmart. Let me tell you a quick Costco story. I like to buy local whenever possible, unless it just doesn't make sense for me to do so. And hopefully the guy that I bought tires from in the past isn't watching this episode. I needed tires on one of our cars. I had an idea of what the right price was on tires. I looked up Costco's pricing on top of the line Michelin's. Pricing was really good, but here's what got me. I have road hazard warranty on the tire through the projected life of the tire. Within that period of time, I can go in anytime is needed as per the manufacturer's service booklet for a tire rotation and balance at no charge included in my purchase price. That saves me $50 per service at my dealer.
From their perspective, it gets you back in.
Gets me back in.
And I'll tell you this, I talk about Costco a lot. Costco's average transaction price per visit is $212. That's the average. The next closest is Walmart, which has everyday low prices, and it's $78. And they attribute it to the fact of the simplicity of choice, because they only have two types of pretzels, two types of toothpaste, two types of mustard, Kirkland, and whatever brand they choose. And that's it. It's not like 100 different kinds of pasta.
$1.50, I think. I don't even know what it is. I know the pizza is 99 cents. I don't know. I had the pizza once. But the hot dog and the soda, we get it every time. Every time. You can't pass that up. And my wife figured out, she says, you take whatever item, doesn't matter what it is, each item in the cart is $10. Right. That's how it works out. And you're right. The per ticket, it's crazy money. But with the tire purchase, $50, that's a lot of money. I couldn't pass that up. So I bought my tires there. And when my other car needs tires, I'm sure they'll have a similar deal and I'll buy those tires there. Sorry, local tire retailer. I have to look out for my pocket too. So, I mean, it's crazy money. $50.
Yeah, but local tire retailer isn't making money on the tires. None of us do.
Yeah.
I make $20. You make it once you take them off.
Right. And Costco, I don't think they do any other work. I don't even know.
I don't either.
But yeah, I mean, that's thinking big picture.
But they'll make more money as you're wandering through that store for an hour.
Yeah. You know, we went there, we were having a party and we figured, we'll go easy this time. We'll just get the ribs. Well, it's going to be about an hour before the ribs are ready. Oh, great. But we stayed. And I said to the guy, you know how much shit we're going to buy that we don't need in that next hour waiting for these ribs? Probably would have been less to drive to another barbecue place and buy them.
Right. You're right.
But we stayed and the car was full. Ron Usher says, hope they have good luck finding techs in today's times to do the work.
He's right. But Jiffy Lube, Valvoline, Pennzoil, I mean, we all know how they do it. I've tried to recruit them, and they are brainwashed against dealers because they bring them all in-house and they have a career path, and I'm sure Carvana will too.
It's just a question of time. Sean says, awesome intel. Thanks so much. Cheers to you both. Thanks for tuning in, Sean. Isaac says, who is texting the link to the Insight appraisal? I do it through the CRM service tool or manually done by your team. Who sends that out?
The answer, Isaac, is yes. All of the above.
All of the above.
So as they're doing the appraisal through the appraisal tool, they text that. That's the quickest way to get PII. But we also do it through the CRM if it's an internet lead. So the answer to your question is in our service tool is our appraisal tool, but it should all be the same. The true omni-channel, if you go to Apple, you can get online, you can go in store, you can do it on the mobile site, the website, you call in, chat tool, you're going to get the exact same link every single time. That's how we should do it, is model it after Apple. It shouldn't be a different process. Whatever it is on all those omni-channel, links, things you mentioned there, it should be the same link everywhere, so it all funnels back in. All of ours funnels back into the CRM.
100% in agreement there. You know, it's funny. It's regardless of what you do, the process of getting that sale is really the same. It
right.
Really is. Because the product might be different, but you're dealing with the same people, right? Oftentimes it's I hate to use the word barrage, but it's, let's just say it's a systematic, professionally persistent follow-up method that consists of phone calls, text messages, email, LinkedIn messages, Facebook Messenger message. However you are connected with these people, you never know which one they're going to respond to. And if you stop after asking once or twice, you're done. You're done.
And you've got to also make it easier for your team. And I didn't realize this for a very long time. If you really think about it, the way I was brought up, you acknowledge, build a bridge, ask an either or question, or it's information overload. At the end of the day, if you just answer their question, what's my trade worth? Here, I just texted you the link. Go ahead and fill out the information, and it'll tell you exactly what it's worth. That's all the word track is. So there's no more. You can text it to them. You can email it to them. Now, what's the best interest rate? I just texted you a credit app link, or I emailed you a credit app link, or I can send it to you however you want to, do it. But it's the same link. I just need you to do self-checkout at the register. Right. And I'm also doing less work because I'm sending it to them. And then if it's not what they said it was, then I would just deal with that when they get in. But that's how you set an appointment is, hey, I'll empower you as accurate as you want to be, as accurate it's going to be.
You said the car was not involved in an accident. You said there was no paint work. However, the Carfax indicates that the right front of this car, and here's the picture, and my paint depth gauge tells me there's a 1/4 inch of paint on that fender compared to what's on the rest of the car.
And that's so rare because when the customer at the end puts a disclosure, Brian Kramer verified that everything I said is true and blah, 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 and click check and then submit. They typically at that point go in and they get it accurate.
Yeah.
And if they do, once we walk around, hey, we don't pay them in a quarter. It says that you probably didn't know about that. No, I totally didn't. Okay, well now you know why it's worth $1,500 less. And
Right.
there's typically zero pushback on that, unless we call them out a liar.
Well, I'm not saying you're lying, but according to the Carfax, you've owned the car for 10 years, and this, now salvage title happened 3 years ago.
Right.
But I'm not saying you're lying. That's what I love about the technology. Greg Dudley says service exchange opportunity is done before the service is done. Yeah.
Another good.
Service exchange process starts with the service check-in walk around. 100%.
So it has to, and you can't molest the customer, as I call it, before they engage with the ASM. That's how you piss off an ASM, is talk to the customer before they've started their repair order.
Right.
That's a absolute out of bounds situation.
And for the stores that offer drop off and pickup, there's another
It's a huge opportunity.
Right?
Yep.
It's a huge opportunity to get that process down. Mark Williamson says, check codes on appraisals. You aren't insinuating customers would be less than honest, are you?
I would say it's less than 10% of the time. As long as you explain the expectations up front and let them know that we will be inspecting it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is based on your true and honest representation of the vehicle based on the questions that you answered truthfully. Anything different than that.
But he's right. Wrong. I mean, it's a lot more than I would have thought of people clearing the check codes. The other day, 17 minutes before they got there was another person in the parking lot. After they had already been on the desk log, they went back out before they appraised their car. They said they had to get something out of it. That's when they cleared the code.
And here's the thing, though. When you give somebody a number like that, they're coming in, right?
Right. It's an appointment.
That's your fail-safe. That's when you're looking them in the eye and you're building rapport with them and verifying the information.
And we've lost some of those deals. And some of them, the salesperson spent a lot of time with them, and they said, well, they went over to the Chevrolet store and they gave them $2,000 more, and they didn't deduct for the fact that the evaporator, the condenser, and the compressor were out, right? And they had just, put a charge on it right before they came in, but I could see on the code that it wasn't current, but it had just been cleared.
Right.
And you got to be okay saying no to those deals because you know how that story is going to end. And It's also not the right thing passing that. I mean, as a dealer network, passing it on to the auction. If that store wants to make a mistake, that's on them, right? Because I'm looking for singles and doubles. I'm playing money ball. I'm not trying to hit home runs. Right.
Yeah, no, there are some instances where it's justified to walk from the deal. And that clearly is one of them. If I work for a dealer, I'm not going to stick the dealer with the car. That's just not going to happen. Isaac says, how about a hot cup of coffee that gets cold? Paul Machine says, instead of passing the cost of inefficiency onto your customers, improve your efficiency. Hey, we just talked about that. Best quote by Brian Kramer. That is a very good quote. Isaac says, Brian, totally agree. Not a Nissan Rogue fan myself, but we have been doing well with them too. By data, we deal well with Cadillac XTS also. Paul Machine says, Paulie, you were talking about retail market insights. I love it. That's because I hang around with you, Paul. He and I, we have our data conversations. I love data because anything that can be measured can be improved. And,
And he's got all the data.
He's got all the data. And I so vividly remember the gurus in my days working for dealers. The guys that would come out, they'd know the car inside out, sideways, and backwards. And if it was something that was what we carried, he'd be as accurate, if not more accurate, than some of the software today. But because we've become such a global world, we now have to think. Paul Machine says, don't think outside the box. He says, throw away the box. But we have to think outside of what we know, because our opportunity goes a lot further beyond that. All this talk about shipping cars, and here, let me share this here. And this is something that, first time, I've lived here up in Niantic for 10 years, and the first time this year, more than once, is that view right there.
And there's a lot of ways we can justify why that happens or dismiss it. But if those are no, and typically those cars that are on that truck are cars that are high demand vehicles, low market day supply, retailable cars. They say no, like we should be saying no to the wrong cars, and they put all the money in the right cars.
And here's what I do. So I'm not too shy. So I'll talk to anybody. I've made friends everywhere. You know, a couple of years ago, my wife's going through the barbecue list. Teresa. Who's Teresa? Oh, that's my friend. Your friend Teresa. Yeah. Where did you meet Teresa? I met her on a flight from Baltimore. In Waterbury. We hit it off on the plane, so we became friends. She knows there's nothing funny going on. So
but it's a decentralized world.
Where I'm going with that is that I see a lot of Carvana plate frames. And I walk up to those cars. We were in Jersey at a birthday party. And we went across the street to the diner afterwards. And I see this guy sitting in a car. It says Carvana. Nighttime, 11 o'clock. I'm knocking on the guy's window. He probably thinks, what is this guy, nuts? He rolls down his window. Hey, I'm in the car business. I couldn't help but notice you had a Carvana plate frame. How was your experience? It was awesome. Actually, my wife got the car. It was awesome experience. I said, would you buy from them again? He says, absolutely. All right, great, thanks a lot. We went inside. Another time I asked, and they said, it was a great experience. There was an issue at delivery. The truck broke down. But it wasn't a big deal. We just drove, we met the truck, and we picked the car up. Right?
And typically you hear the tag and title, but once they get that figured out.
And they will.
And we need to figure it out before they do.
Yeah. We had a head start. We just need to get back in the race the same way.
Right.
Isaac says in Philadelphia that watch is $50.
I think he's talking about yours.
Oh, I'm not wearing one right now.
All right, he's talking about mine.
And he says, nice, awesome, thank you. That is great. You guys, True Car / AccuTrade. We are using trade pending, which only gives a range. Thanks, Brian. You guys kick ass.
So he brings up a real heavy point. And we're piloting a few things with Robert Hollinshead and AccuTrade. We're going to white label that product, Germain Automotive Network.
Yeah.
But regardless of who you use, what he just said is the key. Customers want a real number, and that's what they get from Carvana. That's what they get from CarMax. Yeah. And as an industry, we've got to be, whoever it is that we feel gives the right number, that's the deal, is giving them a true number based on data and then standing behind it, right, wrong, or indifferent when they come in. And then we've got to actually get chairborne, or airborne, not chairborne, and go look at the car, inspect it. And if it's not, that's where the trade values are going to come from. If it's not what they said they were going to, we need to make adjustments for it, which I find the customers are pretty understanding on. But
very understanding.
We can't complain about it if we don't do that. And then the next day on the trade walk, who looked at this car? This thing's not worth that. We're not doing that anymore. We're not guaranteeing these numbers. I knew this wasn't going to work. And then it blows up.
You know what I see, what I've seen too a lot over the years is some people delete the cars they don't buy from the appraisal process.
I've seen that too.
Right? You might have seen that once or twice.
That's some Lance Armstrong stuff, but yeah.
I
Then
mean,
you don't have accurate data. You don't know what to fix.
if you don't know what your true look to book is, then how can you improve that? And take it one step further, right? Now, we could go crazy with data. But if we harness the data, it's like riding a bull. It might be wild, but if we learn how to do this, guess what? We can do it. Because now, if I know what my true look to book is, I also have the data from the software that will tell me specifically where that car I didn't buy ended up. Right? You know
my
this.
look to book is one of the lowest in our group. But here's the way you've got to break down your look to book. And anybody who's not doing this, I highly recommend this. You've got to break down what's your sight unseen appraisal look to book. Yeah. Because that's a whole different metric, right? What's your equity sales drive look to book, and then what's your showroom look to book? And
bingo.
Those three metrics, if you blend them together, you shouldn't be at 60. You should be 60% in the showroom. But everybody keeps on saying, I got to be at 60%. If you're really doing it, 60% is really tough to achieve. And you should actually try to, just like closing ratio, right? Everybody always wants to have the highest closing ratio. Well, then your staff's going to stop logging all their ups, and people are going to stop appraising all the trades and putting them in the system. You lose all the data.
And here's the thing, as I said, anything measured can be improved. Now, you expect the showroom number to be higher, just by virtue of the animal that it is, it will be. But that doesn't mean you can't fine tune all of them. Doesn't mean you can't fine tune the other two opportunities. But if you adjust your numbers and skew them by making the number as opposed to recording the number,
you're hurting yourself and your team.
You're hurting yourself and your team. Isaac says, totally agree. Giving a range is not a Carvana CarMax experience. You oftentimes only have one opportunity, right? And you need to have the data to know exactly what trim level it is based on having the software to put the right number on that car right off the bat. And if it's in your service portfolio and you know that the brake work was just done, the tires were just done, and you want to make an adjustment based on that knowledge, that's just going to ensure that you're going to get that car.
But seeing if you can get one over on them, Reggie Vaughn just commented, great insights, using the data is the best way to change the game. They should be done quickly. I'm actually working with him on a product, kind of like a Google Duplex product that he's involved with called Numa that we're almost ready to launch.
Very good product.
Yeah, you're familiar with it?
I know Reggie. I've seen demo. Yeah.
We work together at AutoNation.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's a strong product. The thing is with technology today, it evolves at such a rapid rate.
It's hard to keep up with your tech stack. I mean, it's taken us months just to be able to get set up to, and that's the other thing is that there's so many things that we want to do and we want to integrate into our tech stack, but it's so challenging because everything has a ripple effect on every other piece of software. Like on the sight unseen appraisal that these guys are talking about, if you don't have it on your mobile site, your desktop site, your app, your digital retail tool, every aspect of your business, every CRM template, you change one link, you got to change it in 100 places.
Yeah.
Because it affects so many things.
Yeah. And you can't have any broken links either, because that's an immediate credibility destroyer.
Yeah.
Ball Machine says high quality data allows you to empower your people to deliver a guaranteed trade value. Yeah.
As long as we trust the data, because some people are still skeptical when it's hitting them straight in the face.
DNA is DNA. Right? I mean, that's really what a lot of this data boils down to. It's a DNA profile.
Yeah.
Now, I know you say you weren't there. However, your DNA is all over the victim and hair follicles.
Right. Yeah, and
Now where are you
everybody's got
going?
blood on their hands at this crime scene.
Yeah, now where are you going?
Right.
Brian, this has been an incredible show.
No, I appreciate you making my Sunday night more exciting.
I could talk with you about this subject probably for the next 20 hours straight, and we wouldn't get bored and we wouldn't run out of things to talk about. So I appreciate you spending the time with us on Sunday night.
No, thank you for having me. Thanks to everybody who spent the time to check it out.
I got some other stuff I want to talk to you. I'll give you a call at the store. So thank you very much, and everybody that tuned in and that asked great questions. Thank you so much. This has been a really, really great show, and I appreciate the support everybody gives by tuning in every week. It means a lot. Hope you guys have a safe holiday. We still have Monday as the holiday, and then next week have a successful week, and we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. Thanks again for tuning in.
Thank you.